you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex. To say that the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 were kind of fraught with all kinds of heavy emotions is really the understatement of perhaps the entire decade. I know we're at the beginning of this decade, but it might not be too soon to say that. So I know lots of folks are out there feeling super stressed right now for a multitude of different reasons. And on top of that, we now have spring and summer coming up. So January and February are when people often start working out again. You've made your New Year's resolutions and you've decided that you're going to do something different with your life this year, with your body this year. So I want to talk a little bit about crash dieting. We tend to talk about a lot of the other types of diets on here, but I think it's also important to discuss the ones that maybe don't work and why. Much like studying for an exam the night before, we often kind of try to cram a diet into a week. We decide, hey, my wedding's coming up, or prom, things that we had in the before times. I'm not sure what that's going to look like for us in a few months. Hopefully with the vaccines and appropriate measures like social distancing and stuff continuing, people will be able to go to their proms and stuff. But those are just a couple of reasons why people might crash diet. So today, I want to talk to you about crash dieting. We're going to talk about the things that can happen to your body when you crash diet. The only crash diet that some dietitians say can perhaps help you without harming your metabolism. And we're going to talk about other ways to lose weight quickly. So up first, let's start with some of the things that can happen to your body when you do crash diet. So these are according to a doctor. These were well researched, not by me, but by another person who provided plenty of resources when I was Googling it too. And they have some really important things that we should keep in mind. Crash dieting is pretty common all throughout the year, really. People crash diet right after the holidays. They also crash diet right before the holidays, right before summer, etc. And I think that the real underlying issue for that is mainly body confidence or lacking it in some way. And that's why we start focusing on it. Focusing on dieting is also really easy for a lot of us, and it's a go-to because it's one of the things that we have control over. We can't control the economy. We can't control whatever's happening in politics. We cannot control a lot of things in our jobs and our families, etc. But we can control what happens to our own bodies, and it's easy to go overboard in that process. Also, most of the things that are harmful to our bodies are happening on the inside when we crash diet. So we can't really see the havoc it's wreaking with our health. So a crash diet might help you lose those extra pounds that you need for a week-long vacation, or, for the week before your wedding, or if you're trying to drop weight for, I don't know, like a boxing match or something. It can help you out with that, but that's not necessarily good for you, and it can negatively impact your mind as well as your body. So, first up, what does it really do for us? Well, it can actually reduce your metabolic rate. So having a high metabolism is really crucial to losing weight, but crash dieting really makes your metabolic rate lower. So your muscle is breaking down at a much higher rate with extreme dieting than with a steady, continuous approach. So less muscle reduces your metabolic rate. So you're losing muscle by doing this crash diet, right? And then that in turn is also reducing your metabolic rate. And that's really the number of calories that you're burning while your body's at rest. They're talking about your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR. And that can ultimately result in weight gain later on, because after you stop this crash diet, you're still at a muscular deficit, and so you're still at a metabolic rate deficit. So now it's easier for you to gain weight after your crash diet is over. So sure, you might lose some weight in the short term, but in the long term, is it really worth it? Also, it can weaken your immune system. You need those essential vitamins and minerals for your body. So we've talked about that in the past, in previous episodes, how vitamins and minerals are really important to get from your diet. Dietitians are going to recommend that you get those from your diet. If you need supplements for whatever reason, like you work the night shift, and so you're not really exposed to a lot of natural sunlight, or you have a medical condition, etc., then yes, your doctor's going to recommend these supplements, and there's nothing wrong with that. But by and large, if you're able to get these nutrients from your food, then that's ideally the way that we should be. But when we go on a crash diet, it increases that deficit of vitamins and minerals that we may have already had. So for example, I am usually low in vitamin D. I have to consciously think about going outside because all of my hobbies and volunteer work and jobs are on the internet, right? So I'm usually inside. I don't want my computer to overheat in the summertime, and now in the wintertime, it is just too daggum cold to be out there typing in the Appalachian Mountains, y'all. So it's really difficult for me to do that with my personal situation. So I have to set aside time intentionally to go sit out on the picnic table in the backyard or go get on the trampoline and get some of that sun. Sometimes I go for a drive. I don't have tinted windows because my car is almost a classic. I'm super excited for that to happen. And so whenever I go out driving, if I take off the Targa and stuff, the hardtop, the convertible, then you're able to get some more sun from it, right? So sometimes I do that, but that's harder to do when it's cold out, right? I'm kind of a weenie about the cold, despite having grown up here. So it's important that we try to get these vitamins and minerals the best way possible. So because I have a vitamin D deficiency, I have been prescribed vitamin D by my doctors before. I've also been prescribed calcium supplements. So I have to be intentional about my milk intake too, which is also why I drink coffee, because my coffee is like half milk. So you have to do what's important and best for your body, because we don't want to weaken our immune system, especially right now during a pandemic. We've talked in the past about not drinking too much alcohol, because that can also make you more susceptible to different types of microbes. But the same thing can happen if you crash diet. And so that low immune system means you're more susceptible to getting ill and to getting sicker if and when you do get ill. And that's not what we want anytime, but particularly right now. So the types of foods that are especially important for this are fatty foods, because those help us absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. So remember, you need that in your body. You need that fat in your body anyway, so that you can have help processing those fat-soluble vitamins. Otherwise, even if you are taking the vitamins as supplements rather than getting them from your food, it's just going to kind of pass through you. You're not going to get the most out of it. So you do need that fat. And you need those vitamins. Those are necessary for supporting your immune system, and not having them can lead to future issues, just like the metabolic issue. So the third thing that happens to your body when you crash diet is that it can cause ketone production. This is especially true with very low carb diets. So you may have heard of the keto diet, Keto, and it's a very low carb diet. So when that happens, if you're on one of those, your body starts to break down your fatty acids, and those produce ketones. So that might help you drop a few pounds, but it can also have some damaging side effects. It can give you nausea, bad breath, and liver or kidney problems. So sure, bad breath in the short term might not seem like that bad of a thing, but keep in mind that if something's causing you nausea, that's indicative of another problem in your body that you really don't need. We get kind of used to being nauseous as we get older because we've experienced it in so many different contexts in our life. But when we're actually doing it to ourselves, it's important to keep in mind that nausea is your body reacting and going, hey, something's wrong here. It's really a red flag, or perhaps, a yellow flag. It's letting you know things aren't dire, but there's something really wrong, and I need you to pay attention to what's happening to your body right now. But you can also get liver and kidney problems too, and that is overtly very serious. It can also cause dehydration. So a lot of people decide to do certain diets like juicing to get some quick weight loss results. But that is happening because you're losing water weight, and that's a short-term goal, right? But it's not ideal for long-term weight loss. You're going to lose that water weight first. But you have these glycogen stores in your body, and the glycogen, as we discussed before, is an energy source, and it binds to water. So those glycogen stores are depleted faster than the fat cells that are releasing the water. So when you do start putting nutrients back in your body again after your crash diet's over, your body is going to start replenishing your glycogen and water store, and that's also going to result in weight gain. So you're going to lose weight in the short term, but then you're going to immediately gain it back right afterwards. That also carries with it the risk of dehydration, and associated complications of dehydration include headache and dizziness. So sure, you might be able to fit into that dress when you go to walk down the aisle, or you might be able to get into that weight class that you want for your match. But is it really a great idea to be walking down the aisle or into a ring with dizziness? The headache might be able to brush off, but this is supposed to be an exciting day for you, and you don't want to carry a headache in there with you either. It's more important to look at this as a long-term thing and speak with a dietitian or a nutritionist or a trainer about this to make sure you're getting the results that you want. If you're okay with having the weight gain come back later, I understand that, but keep in mind the physical side effects too. It can also trigger heart issues. So crash dieting can have some positive outcomes. Not going to lie to you about that. It can lower your blood pressure, it can lower your blood sugar levels, and it can also lower your cholesterol. That last one's pretty appealing to me because when I've gone to the doctor in the past, a couple of times they've told me my cholesterol levels are outrageous. So I'm about to buy stock in Cheerios and then just eat a whole bunch of it. I'm kidding. I don't actually know anything about the stock market aside from what's going on right now with hedge fund managers shorting stocks and Redditors buying them and refusing to do anything other than hold. And I know that it's GameStop stock. As a gamer, I'm interested in that. But beyond that, I find the stock market to be somewhat bewildering. I digress. My point is that it might sound appealing, especially if you have certain issues with blood pressure or cholesterol, like I do, or blood sugar levels. But it can also have some harmful side effects on your heart because your heart can start accumulating fat if you're crash dieting. So keep in mind that if you do have a heart problem, you need to discuss crash dieting with your doctor prior to starting that because you can get heart problems popping up early on in the diet if you already have heart issues. It might sound appealing at first, but it can be very dangerous depending on our specific medical history. Remember that we're all different, and when we read these articles online saying, hey, crash dieting is a great idea, or even when it says that it's a terrible idea, oftentimes these articles are from a very general point of view. It's meant to be broadly applicable to a lot of people to make sure that they maximize how many people are clicking on their content and reading it. But it doesn't take into account the holistic nature of human beings or our individual particular needs and differences. So keep that in mind when you're going into these things and look in the articles for things that are specific to you. And if you're not finding them, like high cholesterol and crash dieting, if you're not finding those things in there, talk to your doctor, talk to a friend who is a nurse practitioner or a PA or a doctor or anyone that you know who has that type of experience, and see if there's something particular that you should be aware of for your personal medical history. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to pick up on these issues that can happen with your crash dieting, and then we're going to talk about the only crash diet that might be safe. Stay tuned.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
Some things that can happen in your body if you do decide to crash diet, including things like heart issues being triggered, associated dehydration, weakening of your immune system, reduction of your metabolic rate, and ketone production. So we're going to pick up there where we left off, starting with it can damage your hair and skin quality. So this is a big one for my buddy Marie. So whenever I'm doing something, I'm participating in a habit that I shouldn't, not necessarily because it's bad when, in moderation, but if I'm doing something in excess and it can affect your hair or skin, that is Marie's go-to. And she's like, dude, you need to stop that because that's going to mess up your skin. And Marie has beautiful skin because she abstains from all of those things. So that's also something important to you. If you are a Marie, then keep that in mind too. So it's not just things that are going on with your internal organs. If you're crash dieting for like your wedding or prom or something, keep in mind that you want your hair and skin to look beautiful then too, normally, right? So we put a lot of work into that, into being, pretty or handsome for these type of events. And we don't necessarily want to drop weight at the expense of the things that people do pay more attention to, like our faces, right? So, if you care about those things, then maybe avoid crash dieting. Because when you go on a crash diet, it's limiting the amounts of those vitamins and nutrients that your body can absorb again. And that in turn can have a negative impact on your hair. It can make it look lackluster. It can make it fall out. And it will really reflect the lack of the right vitamins in your diet. It'll make your hair look flat. It'll lose its shine, things like that. Things that can't be replaced just by washing it again or putting a treatment in it or brushing more of your natural oils through your hair. It can also do the same thing or a similar thing to your skin. It's going to make it look dry. It can also cause you to experience an acne breakout. you're also going to be dehydrated typically during this time. And that's not good for your skin. Your skin needs lots and lots of water in order to look and feel its best. I've recently downloaded an app called Fabulous, I believe. Yes, it's called Fabulous. And it helps me to keep track of the things that I'm doing each day. They're not paying for this. I just downloaded it from the App Store the other day just to try it because I'm one of those people who needs like a digital reminder. Time slips away from me. So I downloaded this thing and it lets you choose your own goals too. And one of mine is water and waking up in the morning. I'm trying to establish a morning routine. So in this morning routine, I've decided I'm going to start my day out before I pick up my phone or anything with drinking like a glass of water. So the night before, I get me a little lidded cup, I fill it with water, and then I can fumble at it and try to grab it in my sleep and not spill it all over myself. And so far, that's working pretty well for me. I've also been drinking water through a straw because I've realized that I personally drink more water or any beverage, honestly, except for beer. That one I tried with a straw, that was weird. So I did not enjoy that one. But, I'll drink sodas or sweet tea, water, etc. through a straw, and I will drain that drink a lot faster than I will if I'm actually having to put a cup to my lips. I'm not sure why that is, but it is what it is, right? So, while I've been drinking this water, my point is that I have seen a great change in my skin. My skin is so much softer, and it's also been more plump in the places that I want it to be plump, like under my eyes. And it almost looks like I'm glowing. Now, part of this may also be attributed to the fact that I'm working on my sleep schedule, backing it up 15 minutes at a time, like doctors and sleep specialists recommend. They recommend not doing it more than 15 minutes per night, so that it's not too taxing on your body and too confusing, because your body will get used to waking up at the same time if you're doing that regularly. And I've also been using a coffee scrub, which is literally just straight up using the coffee grounds out of the pot after I have finished making my coffee. And then I let it sit underneath the little bags of my eyes, or like right on the bags under my eyes for like 10-15 minutes. And that's been helping too. So I'm not going to tell you that this is all water. This is a concerted effort. And because I started all of these things around the same time, I can't tell you for sure that it is the water, or that the water is playing even a major role in it. That would make me a poor scientist. But I am telling you that I think that it is making a big difference in my body. I'm not just changing my sleep schedule, but it's also helping me to go to sleep, if that makes sense. Because I can try to go to bed earlier all I want to, but normally I just lay in bed wide awake. But that extra water has been helping me out. And crash dieting would really just throw a wrench into that new system that I've established for myself right now. So if you're on a similar system and getting more sleep or something like that was in your New Year's resolutions, then it's important for you to keep in mind that things like crash dieting can actively work against you even as you're trying to reach those other goals. And we want to try to help put all those goals in harmony. So we don't want our skin to get gross, or our hair to get gross, or to have a dreaded acne breakout, which this can still happen to you as an adult. Even if you don't normally get acne breakouts, it can get triggered by these crash diets because it's disturbing the homeostasis, the balance in our bodies. It can also disturb bowel habits. So if you crash diet, it can also result in your tummy not being very happy. So if you're not getting the right nutrients in your body, that can also impact your bowel movements, and they can become irregular or inconsistent. It can change the consistency of your stool. It can make it either very runny or very difficult to pass. And so you can really get diarrhea or constipation type symptoms whenever you crash diet. And it just depends on the person and the type of crash dieting you're doing as to which one you're gonna get. But that's also a flag from your body, like nausea, going, hey, there's something off here. This is not what our stool is supposed to look like. This is uncomfortable, and this is a signal that I feel like I'm not being treated very well. That's your body trying to communicate its needs to you the best way it knows how. If your stool gets very weird and you've been crash dieting and you're worried about it, make sure that you reach out to your GP. Crash dieting can also leave you with low energy levels. So, while crash diets may often lead to weight loss, most of that weight is coming from reducing those glycogen and water stores in your body that we were talking about. So remember, those glycogen stores are energy, and they're associated with those fat cells releasing their water too, and kind of shrinking down, if you think about it that way. So you are pretty much just dumping your energy stores out of the airlock, to borrow a sci-fi term. So you're just throwing them straight into the trash by crash dieting. It's not good for you. Your body is essentially dumping those along with that water. In other words, you're pretty much just flushing it down the drain, quite literally. It's leaving your body and you're flushing it. And that means that your body doesn't have as much energy to draw on, and that can leave you feeling really sluggish and tired. You need to maintain those vitamins and minerals as well as that amount of water in your body. Crash dieting can also make you irritable. So you don't want to be grumpy on your wedding day, right? It might help you in the ring as long as you're able to focus that energy of being irritable on the task at hand. But it's not necessarily going to help if you let your irritability get the best of you. That can mess up your focus in the ring. So it depends on the type of person you are. I know I say that a lot, but that's honestly the truth. If someone tells you there's a one-size-fits-all approach to dieting or anything in life, really, I think that should make you skeptical of them, to say the least. I'm not ever going to lie to you guys, and I'm not going to tell you guys things like that. Everybody's body is different, and also everyone's situations are different. But for the most part, I think that most of us don't want to be irritable. We don't want to look how we think is our best in our bathing suits and still be just really grumpy and not enjoying a holiday. So again, the question is crash dieting, but at what cost? Do you want to be grumpy on your vacation or your wedding day or at prom? Or would you rather maybe, have a little bit more tummy than you were intending, but have a great time? Part of that is going to be in your mind, right? So your mind is what's setting these goals for yourself and looking at yourself in the mirror and going, oh yeah, I look good, or I don't look good. I want to look better. But also, particularly for people who have uteruses, we often tend to have weight fluctuations throughout the month. I live in a house right now with 6 people, 5 other people and me, and all of them except for one are female. So we are all constantly going on and off of our periods, and me and one of the girls in the house started on the same day this week. And so we were just sitting there the other day and we're talking in the living room. We're like, oh man, my belly just feels huge. She referred to it as being her blood baby because I called it a food baby, but she was like, no, I have not eaten yet. This is a blood baby, which I thought was kind of funny. So we are sitting there with our tummies and stuff, and we're like, oh, I just feel kind of icky about myself and everything. And she's younger. She's a teenager. And she's like, don't look at my stomach. And I'm like, honey, we all feel like that right now. And she's like, no, you're a skinny legend. And that's because the children are very sweet in this house. And so I showed her my belly. And I was just like, girl, look, this is me not sitting up straight and sucking in or anything like that. I'm also bloated right now. And even though it can get to us, it's important that we still love ourselves, because the water weight and stuff that we carry when we are menstruating, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's natural. And I know that I'm talking about this like a 30-year-old woman or a woman in her 30s because I am one. My birthday was last month. I'm 32 now. But it still rings true. And the fact of the matter is, my body is going to do this every month. And there's nothing I can do about it, barring going on some type of birth control, like Seasonique or something like that. But I'm not going to do that. That's not my bag right now. And, maybe I would do that in the future. But for now, that's not the choice that I'm making. So since I'm not doing that and I'm not seeking to become pregnant right now, which usually halts periods. In some rare cases, women continue to bleed and stuff. I don't really want to live my life upset about this, right? So I was talking to a guy friend the other day about some other issues in my life, and he gave me advice that was not related to health in any way, but it still applies to it. And he said to me, well, if you know that this thing is going to happen and you know what your reaction typically is, what are you going to do about it? Instead of trying to change the thing that's going to happen that you can't really stop from happening, how about you adjust your temperament for it? Do it on your terms. Now, I can't necessarily change a lot of things to my terms about things like being on my period and being irritable, but I can choose how I feel about my body when it goes through those changes, right? So when I gain that water weight and I get bloated each month, what am I going to do about that? Am I going to just hate my body and how it looks for that time? Or am I going to just decide that I love my body no matter what and just recognize that weight gain for what it is? An inevitable bloating brought on by the very natural process of menstruation. So I'm still new to this. This is my first month trying this. I just had this conversation with my friend the other day, my friend Terrius. And so my period just started a couple of days ago. So this is very new to me. I'll let you guys know how it turns out. But I do think that everything is related holistically with our bodies. And it's partly mind over matter. And if I keep in mind that this weight gain doesn't entirely matter, then that's going to help me out in the long run. As Viktor Frankl says, when you are no longer able to change your circumstances, you are challenged to change yourself. So for me, in this instance, it is about changing my reaction to the situation, and that will alleviate the distress that I'm feeling over it because I can't change the actual circumstances. So I'm happy with that approach, and I hope that it helps some of you, but I also recognize that it's not necessarily for everyone. And again, I'm not telling you guys that everyone can just go, oh, okay, it doesn't matter, or even that you should try. It's up to each of you to think about that. But keep in mind that if you're already unhappy with your body, crash dieting can make you more irritable because it can trigger the release of corticosteroids from your brain, and that then predisposes us to having higher stress levels, making us more irritable, and it carries with it a risk of depression. If you are already susceptible to depression like I am, then that might not be a good idea for you. It might also cause you to have some poor concentration and disturbed sleep, which I already have to deal with. And that can then lead to fatigue, which I am also always tired all the time typically. So keep that in mind, that if you're already susceptible to these mental health issues too, that crash dieting may not be for you. It's not just heart issues that can suggest that you shouldn't do this. It's also mental health issues. Remember, your mind and your body are related to each other, and they can form these positive feedback cycles. And positive feedback just means it's like the snake eating its tail. And so it kind of feeds into the other one in this perpetual loop. In this case, positive doesn't mean it's a good thing. It just means that the loop is continuing. And one issue, like the crash dieting, is feeding the depression. And because you're depressed, you're not happy with your body. And so you continue doing things like crash dieting, which continues to release those corticosteroids, and it continues to deplete the water sources in your body and your nutrients. So you will continue feeling fatigued. You'll be out of energy stores. You're going to be irritable, perhaps even more depressed, or it can trigger a depressive episode if you weren't already in it. And it can also heighten your stress, which can also lead to more of those heart issues we discussed earlier. It's all a nasty little feedback cycle. So really critically think about these things if you're considering crash dieting. I know it's usually like a throwaway thing. We're like, oh yeah, I'll just crash diet for a week and it'll be fine. We don't really give it much thought. But with this new information in mind, I hope that you think about it and that you decide to talk to a doctor about it should you choose to follow a crash diet. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about one diet that some dietitians claim is the only crash diet you should consider if you have to lose weight fast. We'll also be talking later on about the water crash diet and crash dieting alternatives. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Dieting can do to your body. So kind of like the side effects of medication, but the side effects of crash dieting. Just like many medications that are meant to help you in one area of your life actually harm you in others simultaneously, the same can happen with crash dieting. But I do recognize that sometimes folks just really feel that they have to lose that weight fast. So that led me to ask, is it possible to crash diet in a safe way? And I found an article online by dietitian Christy Brissett, who says that there are ways that you can kind of crash diet without harming your metabolism. So it's less of a diet itself and more of a checklist, I suppose. Although a lot of diets are also simultaneously checklists of things you can and cannot eat, this is more of the parameters of things like how much you're eating when, things like that. Substitutions for different types of food too. So let's just dive right in. The first thing that Christy Brissett recommends is that you load up on non-starchy vegetables. So if you want to lose weight in the long haul, it's important for you to really make these sustainable life changes. Dieting has to be like a consistent change. Remember that your abs are made in the kitchen. No amount of crash dieting is going to give you those abs. It's just going to either reveal abs that are already there, or it's just going to help you lose a little bit of weight in the short term. Regardless, it is a short-term solution to what's often a long-term issue that you're really wanting to address. So I do recognize that sometimes things creep up on you, I know that during the pandemic in particular, I'm not even sure what day it is. I honestly thought it was Wednesday for 2 to 3 days straight last week. And I was homeschooled for 6 years and I've worked at home for 7 years. But last week, for whatever reason, just seemed to continue repeating, like a crazy Groundhog Day, which is very timely. But alas, this was a Wednesday. So it just kept happening that I would think that it was Wednesday. And I woke up one day and my friend was still at the house. And I'm like, hey, what's happening? And she's like, it's Thursday. It's my day off. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought it was Wednesday. So I had made my to-do list the night before for a Wednesday, because when you're recording, you need quiet, right? So I try to plan everything around when the other people in the house aren't here, which can be hard when you have 5 other people and 3 of them are kids and they're all homeschooled right now, effectively. Some of them are homeschooled, some of them are working on public school from home, but the end result is the same. And that is that there's always someone in this house doing something, making some type of noise. So I tried to plan it around that. But because I've been making my schedule with just the date rather than the day, I totally lost track of what actual day it was. So I had to swap out my Wednesday schedule for a Thursday schedule, which is fine. I just remade a new schedule. But that's part of my ritual at night, is that I make my schedule for the day before. And in this pandemic, it's kind of hard to tell what day it is after a while, even if you know the actual date. So I do get that sometimes life just creeps up, and especially now, when we don't even know what day it is half the time, it can be especially true. And so I get that sometimes you feel like you need that quick solution. One of the best things you can do for your body in that situation, though, is instead of crash dieting, eat a lot of vegetables, especially if you're looking to specifically lose weight. Veggies are packed with nutrients and they have a lot of fiber, which means it's going to help be filling, and it's also going to help you pass stool. So it's going to make sure you're getting the most out of your meals. You're going to lose weight with your intestines getting cleaned out, and you're going to get a lot of those nutrients without having a lot of associated calories. Plus, a lot of these veggies that are non-starchy are going to have a lot of water content. So think about things like maybe butter lettuce. Butter lettuce in this house is our new favorite lettuce, and we have been eating a lot of it alongside spinach. High fiber and water content, low in bad things for you. And it has a lot more nutrients than iceberg lettuce. Butter lettuce also does not really seem to have a lot of the weird taste that is sometimes associated with iceberg. You know what I'm talking about, where iceberg can sometimes seem kind of bitter, especially as you get down closer to the stem. I've really enjoyed butter lettuce having just a very, very mild flavor. So you can really pair it with just about anything. Like you can put it on a BLT or a burger. You can put it in a salad. You can eat it in just about anything that you would have otherwise used plain old iceberg lettuce for. So just sub that in. And if you normally eat iceberg lettuce because you like the fact that it doesn't have much flavor, butter lettuce might really be the one for you. So I recommend that one. But you want to have these veggies that are non-starchy. So when I'm saying non-starchy, I'm meaning we're not talking about corn or potatoes or things like that. We are talking about like spinach and things like that. We want those leafy greens, green beans, all that jazz, and less of those starchy ones like potatoes and corn. Now, those starchy veggies and processed whole grains like whole wheat bread are normally foods that dietitians recommend that you still eat, but in moderation, because they do have a lot of nutrients. They have a lot of fiber. They have healthy carbs. But they are not really what you want or need when you're trying to drop water weight specifically. And whenever you're trying to drop weight fast, typically what you're dropping is just that water weight. Remember when we talked about the dangers of crash dieting, it was talking about how this process is like leaching the water out of your fat cells. And that's why you're running out of energy too. So in addition to not having the nutrients, you're not having any type of energy and you're dehydrated. It's sucking all of the water out of your body and all of your energy. So when your body does store excess carbs, it tends to store it paired with water, like those glycogen fat water compounds. So if you replace these carb-heavy foods that you would normally eat, like these starchy vegetables and processed whole grains, with like non-starchy veggies instead, then that is going to help make sure that you still feel full and you're getting that fiber that you need to. So that fiber helps you feel full. And it also, as we discussed in our episodes on diabetes and insulin, helps you regulate your insulin by slowing down the process of those foods going through your digestive system. If you're big on drinking juice, remember that that's not entirely healthy for you to do in excess because they do tend to be high in sugar, even if the sugar is not added, because these things are naturally high in sugar. It's why our bodies crave sugar. We're used to, back through time, craving these things like fruits because they're high in sugar. They give us more energy. But if you're not eating whole fruit like our ancestors did, and you're just sucking down juice, which, I'm not gonna lie to you, I've done in the past because juice is delicious, it's still really bad for you. And it's not much better than having sodas, because you need the fiber to slow down the process of digestion in order to get the most of it, to allow it to absorb the nutrients and such. So by eating more of these non-starchy vegetables, it works very similarly to eating whole fruit. It's slowing down your digestion and allowing your body to absorb the parts that it needs. Because if it just goes straight through your body, like with a juice cleanse, you're not absorbing the nutrients. You are effectively just pooping a lot. And I don't know about you, but pooping a lot is not my goal. My goal is to have a healthy body that I also feel confident in. If your goal is just to poop a lot, then maybe that juicing diet is for you. That's up to you. That's your body. Those are your goals. But personally, if your goals align with mine, it's important for you to take these whole veggies and whole fruits and help slow that down. And so Ms. Brissett also says that for a week before your event, you can swap out some of those starchy carbs that you normally eat that are delicious, like potatoes and stuff, for more non-starchy vegetables to help lose some water weight. If you're looking for like a visualization for this, imagine you have a plate right in front of you, and you want at least half of your plate to be filled with non-starchy vegetables. So that's going to include things like asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, mushrooms, which are not my favorite, but I appreciate that other people love them, spinach, kale, cucumbers, etc. That's a great idea for everyone's health, not just folks who are aiming to lose weight. So this is good for you to continue even after this alternative to your crash diet. You can also swap out the salt for herbs and spices. So sodium makes your body hold on to more water. So eating a lot of salt means that you probably have a lot more water weight than is actually necessary even for a healthy body. So if you want to get rid of a lot of weight fast, cut out added salt as much as possible. Also, keep in mind that there's often a lot of sodium in things like sodas that are otherwise so sweet that we think that, we think about the sugar content and the calories of soda. We don't think about the sodium in them. So 1 can of a dark cola is about 45 milligrams of sodium. Now that's only 2% of your daily value, but if you're sucking down sodas all day, in addition to the other things that you are eating, you're a little heavy-handed with the salt, because let's be honest, salt is delicious, then you're probably overdoing it with the salt, and there are going to be places in your diet where you can cut that out. Now, some of the easiest ways to do that are to look at your nutrition labels, because that's just going to tell you straight up, hey, this thing has this much salt. For other things that you're drinking and eating that don't have nutrition labels, like foods or beverages that you get when you're eating out, things like that, you're going to have to Google a little bit. But that's also where cooking at home comes in, because then if you're cooking things from scratch, most of the time, like the burger meat and stuff you get at the store is not filled with sodium. Although things like chicken are often injected with saline solutions to plump up the skin and make it look more appealing, make it kind of last longer, and also, in some cases, pump up the amount of money that they can charge you for it, since they are charging you by weight. So one of the alternatives for that is, when I was in Texas, I would go to a local butcher shop that was actually really inexpensive. I was surprised at how close it was to grocery store prices. And whenever you buy things there, you have to eat the chicken, like the whole chicken, within 2 days, or freeze it within 2 days of purchasing it, because it's not pumped full of saline. So that was one of my personal attempts in it when I lived in Texas. Now, I get that's not applicable for everyone, but it's something to keep in mind. It also applies if you hunt or source your own game, or if you're buying things from a local farm. So if you make this food from scratch, then you get to control how much sodium is in it. Avoiding salt doesn't mean your food has to be bland, though. Both of my parents were cooks growing up. They were really big on nutrition, and they were really big on making sure that food tasted good. So I grew up with a ton of spices in my house. And I can tell you that you don't necessarily need to add a ton of salt for your food to be flavorful. There are so many different types of pepper, you guys. There are multiple types of paprika. You can use cumin. Cumin, I think, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated spices that there is out there. You can use a lot of different herbs and spices too for flavoring fish. When I do fish, especially like blackened mahi-mahi, I make my own blackening seasoning, so I can control how much of everything is going in there. And it doesn't take long. After you get used to doing those things, it doesn't take that long. So I'll use cumin, rosemary, cilantro, all kinds of stuff in there, paprika, cayenne, chili powder. I use probably 3 or 4 different types of pepper whenever I cook with that stuff. And it makes it super flavorful without making it salt heavy. And as you reduce your salt, you can do that incrementally, and you won't crave it as much because you're weaning yourself off of it. Our bodies get used to anything. I'm just going to leave it at that. They get used to anything. And that includes pain. That includes sugar, salt, oils. For example, whenever I quit soda, as I have periodically in the past, after a while, if I go to try to drink it again after about 3 months, it tastes like cough medicine. I'm not even joking. It tastes like cough medicine at that point. Now, that doesn't mean that my body doesn't still associate soda with those cravings, though. It associates it with dopamine, right? And it associates it with feeling good. So my body might still go, oh, I don't like the taste of this, but I like the rest of it. I like the caffeine and everything. And so I might still start going back to it again. But another thing that I've noticed is that if I've been having a healthier diet, including not drinking soda and cutting out on a lot of processed carbs and sugars, if I try to eat something like a snack cake, it tastes like granular sugar mixed in with Crisco. Which, on the one hand, makes me sad because I really loved those things in my childhood, those snack cakes and everything, and there's that nostalgic component. But on the other hand, I'm mildly horrified because I'm like, wow, this really is just kind of straight up shortening with granular sugar in it. And I was just crunching through those sugar crystals and stuff before. I just let it ride. So you can actually taste these differences later on. Going cold turkey almost always backfires. But if you wean yourself off of these things, that can be super helpful. And it makes it to where you don't entirely miss it. So you don't have to go off of salt cold turkey, but if you decide to, just compensate with a bunch of other herbs and spices. If you like food anyway, I already recommend herbs and spices. The way I see it is that when it comes to cooking is that I have to spend a lot of my life eating food, and so if I'm gonna have to do that, I want it to be delicious. If I'm gonna be spending so much of my life preparing food and washing dishes and stuff, it's gonna be worth it. And so I'm gonna use a lot of herbs and spices. And sometimes that means reducing the salt. But if you're using all these other herbs and spices, you're not really going to miss it. We're going to go on a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about some more crash dieting alternatives. And honestly, some of them are pretty awesome and easy to follow. It's a lot easier than you might think. Stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about alternatives to crash dieting, according to Christy Brissett, who is a registered dietitian. Now we're going to continue some of that and make sure that we have some alternatives for when we need to lose weight quickly. Because just saying, no, crash dieting's bad, don't ever do it, is not really solving the problem, right? So I like to always point out solutions, potential solutions, when I address a problem. I got that from working in business and in science, so I'm going to bring that to you guys too in this health and wellness routine. So we went over swapping out salt for herbs and spices and loading up on non-starchy veggies. So now we're going to talk about a couple of other things that are easier to do than you might think. First, though, I do want to address water crash dieting, or just water dieting. I originally looked up crash dieting and its accompanying issues because I was on Instagram doing stuff for my Twitch stream when I saw that there were a lot of influencers recommending this water diet or water crash dieting. And so I was like, that doesn't sound entirely healthy. Let me make sure that is what I think it is. And so I found that water dieting is what it sounds like. It's where people just drink water for like a week. And the idea behind it is that you drink only water, and it's supposed to be like a cleanse or a diet, and it's supposed to flush out toxins in your body. And it varies depending on who is suggesting it. So some people say that you have to drink only water. Some people say you can eat an apple while drinking the water. And others say that adding in fruits and vegetables after a few days and you've noticed weight loss is allowable. But for the most part, it's like a 7-day water-only type of cleanse. Now, just like with the other types of crash dieting we discussed earlier, it's not healthy for you to crash with water any more than it is to just crash diet in general or just do these long-term juice cleanses. At least with juice cleanses, you're getting some type of nutrients from it, even if it's not as good by far as whole fruit. But it's going to lead to hunger that can often make you more likely to binge. And that can initiate some unhealthy eating patterns or help them reemerge if you have already dealt with them before. Also, professors of complementary medicine have said that detox treatments are not proven to make your body healthier. Oftentimes, they're just mostly a fad, and it can be really unhealthy for you. So I really recommend against it. Remember that when Instagram influencers and stuff are recommending that you do these things and they're trying to show you their results from it, that oftentimes they're also working out all the time. They're doing a lot of other things in the background, and just saying, oh, hey, I'm doing this water crash diet and look how fabulous I look, is a little misleading a lot of times, because it's highly unlikely that that's the only thing that they're doing. And being an Instagram influencer is a very specific lifestyle built around making people think that you are very attractive and kind of touting a specific lifestyle a lot of the time. So just keep in mind that that's not all there is to the story, much like when I said earlier that water had been really helping me by drinking more of it, along with my meals and stuff every day, but that I'd also been doing things like exfoliating with coffee grounds that have caffeine in them that plump up the skin under my eyes and stuff, and also with messing around and helping my sleep schedule by backing it up 15 minutes at a time. There's often a lot of confounding variables that go into something, and scientifically, I would be remiss to not point that out to you guys. Now, drinking water every day, great for you. Drinking only water every day, not a great idea. Now that we know that water crash dieting is not ideal, let's talk about some more of those crash dieting alternatives. So we know that we can drink more water. And it sounds counterintuitive to drink more water when you're trying to crash diet, when you're trying to lose weight, especially since it's water weight. But honestly, the more water you drink, the less you retain. It's true. So people often mistake their thirst for actually being hungry. So staying hydrated helps you to really understand better with your body, to align yourself with your body, and getting when you are really hungry rather than thirsty. So for me, a lot of times now what I do if I'm feeling hungry is I'll go and drink a glass of tea. And I mean like green tea or chamomile tea, things like that. No sugar. That's just the way that I like it. So it's pretty easy for me to do, especially if it's like Dragon Ball Jasmine. That is my favorite kind of tea. Highly recommend it. And it's pretty when it unfurls too. It comes in these little balls, and when it hits that hot water, it starts unfurling like little flowers. It's absolutely gorgeous. So treat yourself. Have some really pretty, floral, enjoyable tea that's still a very mild flavor. And then if you're still hungry afterwards, like 20 minutes after you start drinking that tea, then perhaps you really are hungry. You can also do the same thing with water, but I like to think of tea that doesn't have anything added in it like sugar and such as being like thick water, if that makes sense. It just feels different from water. I mean, because it is, but not by much. You know, there's not a lot of different nutrients and additives in most of the teas that I'm drinking when I am supplanting my hunger pangs, or what I think are feelings of hunger, for tea. So it's kind of like drinking thicker water. It kind of tricks my body and my brain into just accepting that I'm drinking this tea instead. Now that said, I really love food. Yesterday, I'm not gonna lie to you, I had a slice of pound cake, you guys. It was a small slice, but it was still pound cake and it was delicious. I also ate 2 Oreos along with, my regular healthy meal. So I wanted a little snack, and I gave myself a little snack. I don't normally eat cake and stuff. I'm actually not a big sweets person, but it was in the house, and I've honestly been feeling a little stressed. And we all turn to those kind of foods, fattier foods that are also higher in sugar and stuff. No matter how good your diet is, scientists have found that when people are stressed out, across the board, that is what folks reach for. It's just our stress reaction to eat foods that are high in calories when we're stressed out. That's our bodies going, we need more energy. Because remember, our brains can't really tell the difference between a perceived threat that is mental, like stress from work or a pandemic and things like that. It can't tell the difference between that or a physical threat, like a tiger is running you down. So in both of those situations, your body just goes, oh no, this is not a good situation. I need energy to sustain me so that I can survive this threatening situation. And it means you're going to crave more of these calories across the board. So I try to keep that in mind even when I am eating those things. Most of the time I will abstain from them just because I'm honestly not that into them. But when I am stressed out, I try to keep in mind, hey, don't go too far into this because these feel really good right now. You're getting that hit of dopamine and you don't want to go too far. But every now and then, guys, it's fine. It's fine, and your body will thank you for it. I'm also, as I said earlier, menstruating this month, and so my body kind of is like, hey, you feel like crap. And I'm like, you're right, buddy, I do feel like crap. I'm gonna mostly eat good foods so that I have the energy to feel good, but a little slice of pound cake is totally fine. And it's not going to prevent me from loving myself. I'm not also going to love my body at the detriment of my mental health, right? So that little pound cake slice made me feel nice, and it was uplifting for me in an otherwise somewhat difficult day. Again, I've digressed though. Pound cake is not going to help you lose weight. Water and tea and stuff will. In addition to that, you should avoid gas-forming foods. So things like even chewing gum will cause you to get more gas in your body. We often forget that oxygen is a gas. So when you chew gum, you're swallowing a lot more often than you normally would. And part of that is air. And that air can get trapped. And just like any other type of gas, it can make you feel bloated. So a lot of sugar-free gums even are made with sugar alcohols. And that can also cause more gas retention in some people. Sodas and diet sodas also have a lot of gas-forming sugars or sugar alcohols in them, in addition to the carbonation. So that is on top of and separate from the carbonation. And then those bubbles get trapped in the liquid and can leave you feeling bloated too. So I know that you might feel inclined to reach for a soda, like I do, when I am menstruating, but perhaps try a different alternative to caffeine. Maybe some nice dark chocolate that's low in sugar, or perhaps even some coffee or a caffeinated tea, like a green tea that doesn't have any sugar added. You also need to keep in mind like cruciferous vegetables. So like cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, in addition to beans. Avoid all of those for a few days if you want to look slimmer. It'll reduce the amount of bloat you have. You can also ditch packaged foods. Packaged foods are often loaded with salt and sugar. So they're meant to satiate those cravings you have in yourself. Right? So whenever you're stressed, it's easy to sit on the couch and just binge watch Netflix and eat a bunch of chips. I don't blame you. I do it too sometimes, except for the thing about the chips. In this house, we have moved towards popcorn, and we make it ourselves in the house so that we can control how much salt and stuff goes on it. So I do that, and I recommend also just putting it in a smaller bowl and sitting there and eating it out of that bowl. It makes it easier for you. People also recommend things like carrot sticks. I'm not a big carrot stick fan. I'm not going to tell you guys to eat carrot sticks. If you like them, good. But the thing about dieting is you have to find what works for you. And if you don't love carrot sticks, this is not going to be sustainable. Instead, try things like almonds and stuff, if that's more your bag. I recently found that I like almonds that have some type of flavoring on them, some type of seasoning. I like to eat almonds with apple chips, just dehydrated apples, and they put like some cardamom and stuff on them. That's really delicious. I don't like raw almonds. I know that raw almonds are better for us, but I need a little bit of flavoring, even if it's just the flavoring imparted by natural sugars in dehydrated apples. Find a way to make it work for you. Sprinkle some cardamom and stuff on it yourself. If you're curious about cardamom, it's really added to things like apple pies. It's added to a lot of apple things and a lot of pork products. And pork products also pair really well with apple. And both of those also pair well with sage. So that's not super surprising. Go ahead and grind up some sage, grind up some of that cardamom, or if you already have it in the little sprinkle container, and add that over top of your almonds and your apples. The apple can be whole and regular, or you can go ahead and use apple chips with that. Make it work for you. You can also use that butter lettuce and put some tomatoes and shredded chicken, some avocado on top. I've seen people also recommend diced peppers and brown rice with that. I don't really like brown rice that much, but I will eat things like quinoa or bulgur and stuff. So make it work for you. I don't really like to put peppers, like raw peppers on my salad. If it's like, green peppers and stuff, bell peppers. I like pepperoncinis, but you make sure that there's not a lot of salt added to those if you're going to put them in there. Or maybe try doing a stuffed pepper that you bake instead. So take that brown rice and that shredded chicken and that tomato and avocado, mix it all together, stuff it down into that pepper, and then bake it for a little bit. And then it's going to soften up a little bit. I like cooked peppers better. Now, yes, you're going to get more natural nutrients and stuff from those raw peppers, but again, do your best and make it work for you. If you are going to do dinner, think about quinoa, salmon. You can do a really good salmon that's cooked by seasoning it with lemon and dill. That is actually the one that Christy Brissett recommended, but that's also the one that I used to cook all the time in Texas. I can tell you firsthand that that one is incredibly delicious and it does not need added salt or anything. You can put a pat of butter on top of it too, and that is totally enough. Now, if that's for like my regular eating, if I'm going to do that for like a diet and I was trying to lose weight, then I would maybe just put a little bit of olive oil on there instead. You also want to make sure you're getting enough protein. Protein helps you feel full, even when you're having fewer calories. That's where things like those almonds come in. Quinoa and bulgur are grains, but they also have a pretty good amount of protein in them. So by subbing those in for like white rice and stuff, that can also help you out. Now, I get that not everybody loves those. I'm not a big fan of couscous, but I do like quinoa and bulgur, even though I don't like brown rice, but I do like all kinds of white rice. So go through and try a couple of different things, flavor them in different ways, and see what works the best for you. If you're eating your quinoa plain, that very well may be why you don't like it. I've heavily seasoned mine with herbs and spices, and then I enjoy it quite a bit more. Lean meat in particular, like chicken breast, ground turkey, fish, seafood, etc. Or if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, things like tempeh. You want those to be about the size of a deck of cards at every meal. That's your protein allotment. So keep that in mind. And also get plenty of sleep. Remember, sleep experts recommend 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Try going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, and that'll help you out a lot. If you're trying to wake up earlier, back it up only 15 minutes per day, and that will help you out with it without making you feel really crummy. Since I've changed my sleep diet and I've started drinking more water, I found it a lot easier to wake up. Normally, I'm one of those people who's going to smash that snooze button several times. I'm going to hit it a lot, you guys. The kids have told me I've let that thing go off for an hour at a time, and I didn't even smack at it. I just could not hear it. I get that deep into my dreams and sleep sometimes. But now that I have been changing those habits and being really attentive to them, it's helped me out a lot. I don't feel groggy in the mornings. I'm still like sleepy and I would rather roll over and go back to sleep, but it's not as bad because now my body's waking me up a little bit before my alarm too, and I'm able to continue backing that up. I was not waking up until 3 or 4 in the afternoon there for a while, so I was sleeping like 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 2 to 4 p.m. So I was still getting only about 7 to 9 hours a night, but it was highly variable and all over the place. So just getting the right amount of sleep each night and having a stable schedule really works. I was highly skeptical of it, but it has been very helpful for me. And accompanied with that water, which again, I started those at the same time. I can't really tell which is more helpful. I can't divorce them from each other and tease those variables out. But I can see that it has made me feel a lot better, either or both. And it has also helped a lot with my mental health, because when you don't get enough sleep, it also throws your hormones out of balance. And a lot of your mental health is impacted by your hormones. Not getting enough sleep can drive up your hormones that make you want to eat. And it can suppress the hormones that signal that you're full. And that is going to lead to weight gain overall. They've done a lot of these studies in rats, actually, where they've like suppressed their leptin sensors. So that's the hormone that tells you that you're full, or one of the hormones that tells you that you're full. And when they do that, they would just keep on eating and eating. So they've done a lot of these studies in rats and found these things and then move them on to human trials when they were allowed to. So not getting enough sleep, even if you're getting some sleep, can really mess up your hormones and it can make you eat more. Also, you may have noticed that if you stay up late at night, then you tend to get kind of snacky. And that's part of the reason. Your body's like, well, you're awake, you need more energy, you're hungry now, go ahead and eat something. Or if you're like me, sometimes you just kind of get bored and you like food. So you have to be mindful of that too. But when you're well rested, it's a lot easier to keep those healthy decisions and to stay on track. You want to make sure that your meals that you do eat while you're trying to lose this weight are lighter in the evening. The later that you eat can actually lead to slower weight loss. So you want to eat a little bit earlier in the evening and eat a smaller meal then. They found that eating a larger meal at breakfast and smaller meals throughout the day can help you lose more weight. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't eat anything after 5 p.m. or something, but it's important to think about when you struggle most with the temptation to snack, like those late night fridge raids. Now, in addition to that, just a quick rundown of things includes reducing your alcohol intake, which if you're like me and you're in a town that only sells alcohol at the establishments that make it, and those things have to close right now at 9 due to the pandemic, that makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to let that pandemic rule work for me in this situation. You can also reduce your intake of sugary foods and less processed foods. Just swap out those processed snacks for those dehydrated apples, those apple chips, or, a fistful of almonds that you sprinkle some cardamom and stuff on. Swap out some of the proteins that are normally in your diet for more lean ones. I love fish. If I could eat fish every day, especially sushi, I would. The key to that is just cooking it in a bunch of different ways. A lot of times we get bored with our diets and we get fed up with them because they're kind of boring, right? They become old hat. So you can also just shake things up by learning to use more or different spices. Try to avoid foods that have a lot of trans fats in them, but definitely still eat healthy fats. I'm not going to stop you from eating your avocados, you guys. You go for it. Reduce your stress levels in any way you can. Remember, stress is associated with those corticosteroids in your body, and you don't want those because that leads to weight gain. So just by doing things like right now, releasing that tension from your jaw, make that lion face, and like pretend that you're being a lion at a small child, right? That's what you're doing right now with your face, like you're roaring. Tense that whole area fully and then release it, and it's going to feel so much better. Release your shoulders, go ahead and roll them about 5 times, and then you can just drop them on that last one and kind of tilt your head side to side. Do that now while we're talking about it, and whenever you think about it throughout the day. Reduce those stress levels, journal it out if you need to. Just set like a 10-minute timer and start writing. And it doesn't matter what it's about as long as you keep writing. A lot of times the issues will tease themselves out as you go along. Increase that dietary soluble fiber. You can do it with fruits. You can do it with vegetables. You can do that with whole grains. But remember, if you're trying to lose weight quickly, maybe skip the whole grains and replace them with those rich dietary fibrous vegetables. You also want to try to find a type of exercise that you like. I like to dance it out alone in my room where nobody else can see me. I'm not one to take a Zumba class even before the pandemic, but that is what works for me. Find what works for you. The kids also got a trampoline for Christmas, so after I finish this episode, I'll probably hop out there for a little bit while we still got daylight, while it's still a little bit warm for winter in Appalachia, and get me a little bit of exercise and vitamin D while I'm at it. It's fun. And if you got kids, get them in on it too. These healthy habits start in childhood. And if you're like me and you're a lifelong learner, ask the kids to teach you something that they know. The kids that I live with know how to do cartwheels and stuff, which is something I always wanted to learn, but my mom couldn't teach me growing up because even though she'd been a cheerleader in college, she had carpal tunnel surgery on both of her hands when I was a little kid. And so she couldn't do cartwheels anymore. By the time that I was old enough to start learning them, she'd already had that surgery. So right now, I have decided that for 2021, I'm going to learn how to do cartwheels. And the kids are the ones helping me learn on the trampoline where I feel safe to let my old bones crash into the ground. What is essentially the ground. I feel comfortable letting them crash onto the trampoline without being too harmed. And that's worked really well for me. This past month for my birthday, I also tried snowboarding. That's a great socially distanced form of exercise that's super healthy. My legs were sore for days. What I learned is that I need to do more squats. Snowboarding involved a lot more squatting action and core activity than I'd really anticipated. I was terrible at it, but I had a blast, and I think that I will go again in the future. But that's something that I didn't know I enjoyed as an exercise until I tried it last month, and I'm 32. So try something new that you've been interested in, and maybe you'll really enjoy it. That could even be socially distanced zip lining, because a lot of the zip lining, at least here in Appalachia, involves these really long hikes to these beautiful places that you then get to zip line over the mountains in. So you get to cultivate your sense of awe for your mental health and your spiritual health, and you also get physical exercise, which can help you with your weight loss and just maintaining an overall healthy body. You're wanting to get about 150 minutes of moderately intense exercise per week, and that's a good way to do it too. Maybe go for a socially distanced walk with your best buddy, and try to get in those 10,000 steps per day if possible. There are a lot of different apps that are out there to help you with it. Well, guys, I hope that this discussion about crash dieting has been illuminating and that you've been able to take away some really great alternatives for it. And these alternatives aren't a dieting method necessarily in and of themselves, but they are just little tiny shifts that you can make in your life. Honestly, that's kind of what a diet is. It's just a regimen of habitual activity. But you get my point. A lot of times when we think of diets, we think of fad diets. We think of keto or paleo or Atkins, things like that. But really, this is still a diet. Just this list I gave you at the end of, changing these things in your life. The colloquial sense of diet is synonymous with fad diet, but honestly, this is also a diet. And it can be as easy as working on reducing those stress levels and reducing alcohol intake and subbing in things that you do love for other foods that you love but aren't as good for you. Dieting can still be delicious, and it can still be fun and effective without harming our bodies through crash dieting. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please subscribe to the show, and writing a nice review always really helps us. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, I'd appreciate it. Thank you kindly, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.